Docker is quietly shipping your builds to their servers, and nobody is talking about it. Let me explain why this is a 5-alarm fire for anyone running AI workloads in containers. In June 2026, Docker rolled out an update to Docker Build Cloud that changed the default behavior of how container images get built. Previously, your builds stayed local. Your Dockerfile, your build context, your layers, all of it compiled on your machine or your CI runner. Now, Docker Desktop nudges you toward cloud-managed build nodes. Your entire build context, every file, every layer, every embedded model weight gets uploaded to Docker's infrastructure, compiled remotely, and sent back. Docker frames this as a performance upgrade. Faster multi-architecture builds, better caching, great marketing. But here is what they are not emphasizing. If your Dockerfile copies fine-tuned model weights, low-raw adapters, proprietary embeddings for your RAG pipeline, or any artifact that represents months of training compute, that data is now transiting through infrastructure you do not control, and the attestation story is incomplete. Point 1. Build context exposure. When Docker Build Cloud processes your image, it ingests your entire build context. That means every file in your working directory that is not excluded by Docker ignore gets uploaded. For ML teams, this routinely includes serialized model weights, tokenizer configs, and inference optimization scripts. Docker's own documentation admits that build context is transmitted to the remote builder. They treat this as a feature. I treat it as a data exfiltration surface. The moment your proprietary weights leave your network boundary, your threat model changes completely. Point 2. Layer caching on shared infrastructure. Docker Build Cloud uses shared remote cache to speed up subsequent builds. This is efficient. It is also a supply chain risk. If cache layers are not cryptographically isolated per tenant, there is a theoretical vector for cache poisoning. Even if Docker's implementation is solid today, you are trusting their multi-tenant isolation with artifacts that directly affect your inference output. One contaminated base layer, and your model-serving container is compromised before it ever hits your Kubernetes cluster. In my analysis, Docker has not published sufficient detail on per-tenant cache isolation to satisfy a serious security review. Point 3. Attestation gaps. Docker has made progress on build provenance with SLSA attestations and in toto metadata. But here is the problem. The attestation tells you what the build system claims it did. It does not let you independently verify that the image you pulled back contains exactly the layers you sent. For standard web application containers, this is an acceptable risk. For containers serving inference endpoints where a single tampered weight tensor changes every prediction your model makes, this is not acceptable. Your software bill of materials means nothing if the bill was written by the same party you are trying to audit. If you are still watching this, and you understand why this matters, subscribe. The people building these tools are not going to warn you. We will. Now here is the counterargument, and it is a fair one. Docker Build Cloud is genuinely faster for multi-arch builds. Building ARM64 images on an AMD64 CI runner using QEMU emulation is painfully slow, and cloud-native ARM64 builders solve that. Some teams also argue that Docker's infrastructure is more secure than their own under-patch CI runners. And honestly, for teams with no security posture at all, that might even be true. But that argument collapses the instant your container payload includes proprietary model artifacts. Speed does not matter if your weights are transiting someone else's network. Convenience does not matter if your supply chain is no longer verifiable. You would never email your fine-tuned weights to a third party and ask them to package it for you. But that is functionally what default-on cloud builds do. So here is where we land. Docker has spent the last 3 years transitioning from an open developer tool into a platform toll booth. The Docker desktop licensing changes were round 1. The hub rate limiting was round 2. Build cloud as the default is round 3. Each move extracts more rent from the developer workflow while making it incrementally harder to leave. And AI teams are the most exposed because their container payloads are the most valuable. The question is simple. Are you going to keep letting Docker root your proprietary model weights through their cloud because the default checkbox was checked for you? Or are you going to own your build pipeline? Pick a side.